I'll just say, I'm Linda Ditzler, and I'm your lay reader as well as your announcer today. Welcoming you and also our musicians this morning. We thank them for being here and providing really good music for us. Let us now be in the spirit of worship. For those who are able, please rise and join me in the call to worship. Beginning this new day, we smile. 24 remaining hours are before us. We vow to live fully in each moment and to look toward all beings with eyes of compassion. True beauty is a heart that generates love. In love, God opens a gracious path for us to walk together.
Lord.
We are united in believing that our faith calls us to action in the world. We are a community committed to learning what it means to follow the invitation of Jesus to abundant life. Please take a moment to extend words of peace and encouragement as we welcome one another into worship.
As our service of worship continues, we invite children to come up for a word. All right, guys, how are you doing? Oh, man. What season of the year is this? Summer. It was really hot yesterday, wasn't it? Man, that was unbelievable. Get up in the 90s this time of year in Ohio. Some of you might know I just got back from vacation. How many of you have been on vacation? You guys took a vacation somewhere? All right. Good, good. It's always great to see something different because you meet different people and you learn new things. So I want to encourage you, if you get a chance, go see something. You guys know where I went on vacation? Anybody guess where I went? Huh? Florida? I went the other direction. Yes, Lord? Somebody said that I went to Alaska. And it's true, I was in Alaska 3 weeks. Have any of you ever been to Alaska? No? It sounds like maybe you don't want to go to Alaska. Why wouldn't you want to go to Alaska? Can you guys tell me what you think Alaska might be like? Huh? What do you think? Very hot? Well, sometimes it is hot there. Very cold? Okay, we got those ideas. A lot of sand. Paul, what do you think of Alaska? It's big. Big. It is big. What do you think? A lot of water. There's a lot of water. Hurricanes? They might have tsunamis or something up there. Yeah, something like that. Julie? An earthquake. They do have earthquakes in Alaska. Fortunately, not when I was there. But they do have them. But the point is that we can only imagine what a place is like until we actually go there. And so that's true with our friends and with other people. We can only imagine what they're like until we spend time with them. So I want to encourage you guys this summer to really spend time with your friends and enjoy it. So as every time that I go on vacation, I try to bring something back for you guys. So I've got something for you today. I got it in an envelope. I'm going to hand each one to you guys as you leave today, and you can open them later. It's something that a group of Native Americans. Do you guys know what Native Americans are? Like American Indians? Do a lot of crafts. Okay, they have crafts, and so they made something, and I brought some of them back for you guys. So I hope you can think about another place and imagine what that might be like. But before you go, let's share together in a spirit with God. Almighty God, it's so great to see new places and make new friends. We thank you for all the children who are here today, how we know how much you care for them and love them and want good things for them. We ask, as people of faith, as a congregation, to bless them in all their ways. Watch over them, help them to live in peace, joy, and to find enjoyment in this life, in this world that you've created for us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right, when you guys go, I'll hand you an envelope. You guys want to come through? We got something in here. I had to put them all in envelopes. There you go. All right. Well, they're envelopes because it's like opening a present, right? Except I don't have wrapping paper, so I had envelopes. Let me take it to one for each
The scripture lesson this morning from Mark 5th chapter, verses 21 through 43. As you follow along, please respond at the dark or the bold print. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was by the sea. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue, named Jairus, came, and when he saw him, fell at his feet and begged him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, so that she may be well and live." So he went with him, and a large crowd followed him and pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. She had endured much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and she was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. For she said, "If I but touch his clothes, I will be made well." Immediately her hemorrhage stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Immediately aware that power had gone forth from him, Jesus turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you. How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" He looked all around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, fell down before him, and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." While he was still speaking, some people came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." He allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. When he had entered, he said to them, "Why do you make a commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. Then he put them all aside outside, and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him, and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cumi," which means, "Little girl, get up." And immediately the girl got up and began to walk about. She was 12 years of age. At this they were overcome with amazement. He strictly ordered them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat.
treat it is for us to have the Ohio Light Opera here in Worcester, and especially that we benefit from all the wonderful musicians and artists who are here, so we want to thank you for being here again today. Today is a day when we come to God with many things in our lives. And today I want to talk briefly about giving you a spiritual tool to help you with anxiety. So one of the things that some of you may know that I got back from Alaska and we went to Denali Park. And one of the things that they do for you when you go there is they orient you on how to handle encounters with wildlife. Okay? So, I kind of have my own ideas about that, right? So I'm thinking, if you see a bear, there's a couple things that you ought to do, right? One thing is you ought to look around on the ground for the biggest rock you can find and throw it at his head, right? And then you say, run! Right? Doesn't that make sense? You encounter a bear in the wilderness? Come to find out, that's not good advice. So it's a good thing they have those things. They said that what you do is, the worst thing is to run. Because if you run, the bear is going to think that you are prey, and they're going to chase after you. So what you do is you stick together, and you try to make yourself look as big as possible, and yell, and move your hands. So many times in religion, we don't give the right prescription for the right problem, right? And we are living in an age of distress and distraction, and an age when many people are feeling some anxiety about the course of our nation. Some of us are feeling anxiety about declining income and about problems in our economy and in the world as a whole. And how do we deal with these fears that distract us? And so today, in my thinking about encountering bears in the wilderness, I thought about a strategy to relax. And ever since Easter, ever since Holy Week, I've been thinking about our Good Friday service when we used the 7 last words of Jesus from the cross. Some of you might remember the very last saying of Jesus. Into your hands I commit my spirit. Now, if you're laying awake anxious at night, or if you're moving through life and you're encountering some kind of an interruption or destruction, I would encourage you to use that little phrase that Jesus used. Into your hands I commit my spirit. I'd like to invite you to say that little line with me and see how healing and how refreshing that feels. So let's join in now. Into your hands I commit my spirit. Now, as Jesus was wont to do, he was quoting Psalm 31. Into your hands I commit my spirit. And with that, he took his last breath. Today, if we believe the first part of that, the part of that of releasing our soul into death, we also have to accept the other part of it, which is how we live our lives. Into your hands I commit my spirit. We say in communion, in life, in death, in life beyond death, Jesus was committed to God. And our story today is a good example of the way that Jesus committed his spirit into the hands of God. It was in the way he treated people. And in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus is always on the way, and he has all these encounters with people. People that everyone else wants to push to the sideline, but people that Jesus wants to recognize. Because he gave his spirit to God. And he realized that everyone is a child of God and deserves to be treated that way. So you can imagine the pressure that Jesus is under in this story today, because he has the leading official of the synagogue whose little daughter is sick, and he's on his way to heal that little daughter of this very important, high-standing person in the community. And wouldn't that be his ultimate value to run through? sandwiched this little story about a woman who was on the fringes, who was unclean, who touches the hem of his garment, and Jesus stops his journey at that point. How is it that we deal with interruptions? The parable of the Good Samaritan is always confusing to us because we always ask the question, why do so many people just walk on by when there's a problem? Social scientists tell us it's because we're in a hurry. If someone is in a hurry, they're far less apt to stop and help someone. Or if they feel that they have something else that's more important to do, more important even not in a human way, they won't stop to help. But Jesus stops to help because he knows that's the highest priority. This week, when I got back one day, I was by myself in the office. I had a knock on the door, and there was a man there. He said, "I'm sorry to interrupt you." And he told me a story about his cancer. And he lifted up his shirt, showed me his colostomy bag. He'd just been let out of a medical facility, and he was living on the street. And what he needed was a little bit of money to get the prescription that he needed from his care in the hospital. And as people of faith, if we don't have humility and a sense of humanity and a sense of a hierarchy of values where everyone is valuable, then what do we have? Sometimes these interruptions help us to see the things that are truly important. So think about the holy interruptions in your life. Sometimes it might be the death of someone close to you. Sometimes it might be some way that you've been limited. Sometimes it might be a bear charging in the woods. But these holy interruptions help us to focus on the things that really matter. Now, a month ago, when I picked the sermon title for this Sunday, I used the word serendipity. Serendipity, the meaning of it is a happy chance encounter. An encounter that you didn't expect to have happen, but it happened anyway, beyond your intending. And I got it from the Bible study guides. Serendipity Bible, some of you might have those. That things that matter the most should never be at the mercy of the things that matter least. Martin Luther King said, "Society's punishments are small compared to the wounds we inflict on our soul when we look the other way." So we need to stop doing the things that don't matter and start doing the things that do matter. And what you pay attention to is what you worship. And the meaning of life depends on what ideas you allow to use you. So Jesus says, "Who touched my garments?" And this really is a tassel. I don't have a stole with little tassels on it today. I don't think any of us do today, but you can remember how parents used to have little tassels on them. That's what it means. Just a small thing that this woman reached out and touched him to interrupt his important journey to heal a little girl. And he stopped because Jesus knew Psalm 31. Because he would say the same thing throughout his ministry. "Into your hands I commit my spirit." Spirit of compassion, spirit of love, spirit of concern for human beings. And so she tells him the story, and he says to her, "Your faith has healed you. Go in peace." Now, when Jesus says that word, there's that whole Hebrew word of shalom, a fullness of life. Go out and have a full life. So I want to paraphrase Jesus for you. So he said to this woman, "I'm sorry about the bad things that have happened to you. It's not your fault. God intends good for you, and you can trust God's hands. The other thing I always say about passages like this is that Jesus lived with his sense that people have a right to goodwill from you. And perhaps some of the decay of civility in America today has to do with the fact that we don't think about the common good as often as we ought to. But people always have a right for you to give them your goodwill. And you always ought to approach other people as if you have a right to goodwill from them. That's the foundation of government. So it was just a little thing. It was an interruption, a little fringe. And it's just a small observance that we have on Sunday mornings. It's just one small act of devotion that helps us to develop compassion and to realize that sometimes we are so distracted or so distressed that we forget the things that are truly important. And how reaching out to someone makes things easier. And God will send an interruption into your life. God will send some kind of an interruption to break your anxious thoughts. People reach out because they have a need. So don't be afraid to reach out when you have a need. Because we worship a God who reached out to us. Remember the tip about the bear if you ever go to Denali. Okay? Remember what I said about that. But more important, remember the tip that I said about distractions. Remember the tip because every day we meet anxious people. Every day there's someone that's going to tug on our tassel. And we need to be in that spirit that Jesus had. In your hands I commit my spirit. In life, in death, in life beyond death. And deep healing of our soul takes place when we notice the connected nature of humanity. Join with me again in that last words of Jesus. Into your hands I commit my spirit. That's the tool that I want to leave you with today. I hope that you practice it in life, in the way you live, and in your moments of anxiety. Because this story really does tell us it's just that simple. We reach out our hand and just touch the fringe. Amen. celebrate Holy Communion today, we want to remind you that we practice open communion. We not only invite you, but we also encourage you to share with us in this meal, because it is a sign of new life for the world. It's a sign of the good gifts that God gives to each of us. It's a sign of God's radical welcome and our discipleship. This table talks about things long past. This table looks ahead to things in the future. And this table is about our present and the lives that we dedicate here. We invite you to join us in this meal as we celebrate the life and teachings of Jesus and remember how he lived. We invite you also into a new way of life as we join together in this covenant of peace.
Now join me in the communion liturgy that's printed in your bulletin. May God be with you.
And with your spirit.
Lift up your hearts.
We lift our hearts to God.
It is good and right to give thanks to God. Let us pray.
We give you praise, O God, because you are eternally victorious over death.
In faithfulness you have raised up Christ for us, and your mercy knows no end.
God of light, we pray for those who are bowed down under the weight of hunger, injustice, uncertainty, or despair. You who provide every good thing, uphold your people. Open your hands wide and satisfy the needs of every living thing.
God of hope, we trust in your righteousness and depend on your love. Be near to those on whose behalf we call upon you, to those who face sorrow, illness, injury, or death.
Longings for wholeness, healing, and new life. Hear and answer all who cry out to you.
Consecrate, therefore, by your Holy Spirit these gifts of bread and wine, and bless us that as we receive them at this table, that we may offer you our faith and praise, that we may be united with Christ and with one another, and that we may practice the teachings of Jesus.
In the strength that Christ gives us, we offer ourselves to you, eternal God, and give thanks that you have called us to serve you in the world. Amen. The Gospels tell us that Jesus took bread, and after giving thanks, he broke it, and he gave it to them, and he said, "Take and eat. This is my body, which is broken for you." And in much the same symbolic way, after supper, Jesus lifted up a cup, and he said, "This cup is a new covenant in my blood. You should do this any time you drink it, in order to remember me." This is the joyful feast of the people of God. People come from the east and the west, from the north and the south, and they gather about this table of the Lord. So now we invite you to come and see how good and pleasant it is when people live together in peace. Come, for all things are now ready.
given for you. Take and eat.
This is the cup of blessing. This is the cup of our salvation. This is the blood of Christ, which was given for you and for many. Take and drink. Go out into the world in peace. Render to no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Love and serve all people. And rejoice in the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank
invite you to join with me in the closing benediction. You are the light of the